Okay, I think we're going to start. Can everybody hear me okay? Just give a thumbs up if you can. Fabulous. Thank you. I'm Jason Harris. I'm the CEO of CartoFront. We're absolutely thrilled to be now new in your market. We just launched officially, Fran, I think it was February 3rd, right? Is that the date we did?
I believe so. Yes,
About
I
12
think
days
so.
ago. Been working very hard over the last year or so with Ryan Castle and Marcia and Mary Ellen and the team at CCIAOR. And we're, again, we're grateful to be in your market. It's the sixth market that we're entering. We're in Florida, the upper Northeast, and we're in Boise, Idaho currently. And hopefully by the end of the first trimester will be also NAR member benefits. So across the country, coast to coast, for you as the realtor, as the consumer needing and looking for flood zone information. I'm joined by Fran Latebound. Fran is our manager of communications, design, and social media, and she'll be helping me with the training today. We have a presentation of slides that I'll walk through, and then we'll do a demonstration of our product, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers and have a dialogue. Our goal today is to really just kind of impart as much knowledge about flood information, flood risk, flood zones, and some flood insurance terms, so that you're up to speed on all of that. A lot's happened, both with climate change, as we all know, as well as a lot of changes with FEMA, who manages the National Flood Insurance Program. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and put up the presentation. Can everybody see that now? Okay, great. Put in slideshow mode here. We're also taping this so that for realtor members that are unable to make it, this will be available and posted at your convenience, or if you wanted to watch it again with some popcorn and maybe snuggle up with a Snuggie, that would be good too. We have two trainings scheduled today and then Tuesday the 28th. And we call this Everything You Always Want to Know About Flood Insurance, but we're afraid to ask. A little bit of a take on that famous movie from the 60s. The training in 2 weeks will also be at the Lunch and Learn at noon. All the content that you'll see today will be repeated in that presentation as well. This does not qualify also, just so you know, as for CEs. It's just purely educational at this point. I'll be toggling back and forth and letting people in as we go here. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that's what I'm doing here. Okay. So what is this about? This is really about you as the realtor. We have embedded our product in two places on your MLS, and it's really to help you really overall on the sales process, both on if you're representing buyers, also as if you're looking at representing a property for sale. And there's three distinctive ways that we believe we add value in the transaction process. The first is right up front when you're evaluating on either side, either on the sales side or even before you put a listing up, to understand what the risk is. It's really for education, understanding total cost of ownership, just the parameters of what the risk is of the property and what insurance quotes might look like. So you have confidence in representing either your buyer or your seller. We also see a lot of value when you get that contract or get close to a contract, you narrow down from that pool down to a serious transaction, when you really need to understand the true risk, dig a little bit deeper and really understand exactly what this is going to mean, both for the total cost of ownership month over month, but also the value of the property over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, a lifetime of the property. And then last but not least, that phase from contract in hand to closing, to make sure you've got the right amount of insurance on the property if needed for flood insurance, especially if you're on a flood zone. And It's mandatory if you're going to get take a loan out on it, but more importantly, to look at risk overall over that term and make sure that your client is represented appropriately. Today, the goals are to make sure that you take away some tidbits, make sure that you're knowledgeable, confident, and most importantly, profitable in your market based on understanding flood and flood risk. There's a lot changing in FEMA's world. They're trying to get on par with the private insurance market, a lot changing of the way they risk properties. We'll talk a lot about that. And then, we want to hear from you as well. We want to hear questions, and feel free to post those in the chat. Fran and I will be managing that as we go through today. So a couple questions that we want to ask, and again, feel free to answer in the chat. So the first one is, have you tried our CartoFront application? Have you taken a quote yet? So please take a moment and just respond in the chat, a yes or no. And then also beyond that, what information do you need to advise your clients? So give us a little bit of how you work currently, what types of questions you need to answer regarding flood risk. Please let us know. Furthermore, if you have taken a quote, how do you, share that information with your clients, right? Where along the process are you doing that? And what objections or questions do they have once you present the information? And then last but not least, something to think about: how else can we help you service you and your clients regarding flood risk, insurance, access to insurance markets broadly? Help us, understand what product enhancements we can make to help you. So today we've got 4 chapters in our book. I'm going to do a quick overview of flood overall, talk a little bit about insurance terms, talk about some resources that are available to you, and then we'll do Q&A, and along the way we'll do a demo too. So this is really the major reason we're in business. There's a huge gap in flood insurance coverage across the country, and it's as critical as it is on the real estate side as it is on the insurance side. We've seen in the last 12 months some devastating storms all across the globe. Climate is impacting things in a very dramatic way. And what used to be a 100-year storm is now becoming every couple of years. And this map shows where the hotspots are in the country, and some unintentional risk is highlighted by green, right? Where there's unseen risk that's proving more and more over the time. To point out, last year in the spring, Yellowstone got a tremendous storm, and it just really devastated that area. And just this past last month, California, which normally is pretty dry, got some, substantial storms and major disruption and major loss, both flood and mudslides, which is also another way of looking at floods. It's seen the same way. When we look specifically, in your real estate market, we believe there's 25,000 properties at risk, medium to high risk. And when you look specifically here, this is, FEMA's done a good job in their estimation as far as how they map out your area vis-a-vis an independent study by First Street organization, which is a nonprofit out of New York. Over the last 18 or 24 months, FEMA has done a lot of work to update their program. Just to give you a little bit of history, FEMA was the National Flood Insurance Program was formed in 1968. For the majority of its entire 50 years, up until a couple of years ago, they had the same program in place. They've modernized it over the last year and a half, and now they've made some substantial changes to their program and how they look at things. Let's talk a little bit about that. So where they still have flood zones and they map flood zones all across the country, now they're using that information as well as other information about the property to price their flood insurance. So where it used to be, up until 2 years ago, it was by flood zone, and there was a chart and you priced it out by the flood zone. If you were in an X zone, it was this price. If you were in an AE zone, it was that price. That system has gone away. For each individual property now is priced by its own characteristics based on a bunch of data that they're looking at. The flood zone elevation, distance to water, the value of the property, what have you. Overall, and this is based on FEMA's own information to the government and to every homeowner, about a quarter of the rates went down based on this new pricing model, but 3/4 or 77% of the pricing has gone up. We've seen a very dramatic change for FEMA pricing in the last 12 to 18 months. They've capped the maximum rate at $12,125 for any property across the country. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. What hasn't changed is that if you're on a special flood hazard, those AE, AH, VE, any flood zone, you still need flood insurance to qualify for a mortgage from the government. A note, if you take away one important piece of note here, is if a current seller has FEMA insurance, that's transferable to the new buyer at purchase. There's a whole process you go through, but it's really important that you do that because you're going to lock in the rates that have been existing for a while. Now, on renewals, which is important, again, if someone already has a FEMA flood insurance, they've been repriced in the last year based on their expiration date, and it's repriced based on the new risk rating 2.0. So what's happened again is 75% of those people have seen their rates go up, but the government's capped that at an 18% increase each and every year. So if there's a big discrepancy in the pricing, over time they'll get to the pricing, but it's going to be year over year over year. It may take 10 years, might be longer, right? But they're going to get to market rates from FEMA's perspective over time, but it's going to be capped at 18% renewal each and every year. The community rating system is still in place. Many of the markets that you guys represent are in that program. It's where the community works with the government to get, validated across the entire community. And that has discounts of 5 to 45% for the pricing across the community. Okay. The thing that's really important in all of this is there's less of an importance on elevation certificates in general with FEMA. Yet, if you can provide one and it's going to be a way to make the pricing for the insurance lower, you can always do that. But the old days of you need an elevation certificate to get a FEMA flood insurance policy, those days now are optional as opposed to mandatory. Just a quick thing again about flood zone definitions, right? So the most common one is the X zone, right? The letter X. So that's determined to be low to medium risk across the country, okay? Again, FEMA's doing flood maps each and every year. They're updating them across the country. X zone is probably about 2/3 to 3/4 of the entire country, okay? These are areas, and most of them, honestly, are in the central part of the US as opposed to the coast, like where you guys are at. AE, AH, VE, these are known flood zones, right? This is high, medium to high risk, and this is required for flood insurance if you're gonna get a mortgage for the property. If you pay cash, it's up to the owner to decide how they want to do it. Many of them choose to self-insure, what have you, but they're not required because they don't have to take a mortgage out. Okay, so before we get into it, we've been taking quotes. Overall, we've taken about 35,000 quotes with this new risk rating module, right? So our quotes, for those of you who've been on our system and for those of you who are new, we show a FEMA quote and a private quote side by side. With this new risk rating 2.0, we are seeing 3 types of flood quotes on our system. I want to do that, and then I'll do a demo for you in a second. So the first is it's a known flood zone, right? So in this, the pricing is reflective, both the private, which is this first column, as well as the government, which is the third column. They're both pricing that they see flood zone, and they're going to price the risk accordingly, okay? So in this one, it's pretty straightforward. Your client, if they're buying the property, you're going to have to get flood insurance. It's just a matter of how much they're going to pay, what the coverages are, and what's their comfort level on the government versus private. Okay. The second one is where it's not a flood zone, it's an X zone, right? Yet these are what we call peace of mind. These are low risk properties. They read as low risk. The pricing is as such. And for somewhere between $30 and $50 a month, an owner can have, peace of mind is what we call it. What's interesting here is in any storm, whether it's Ian down in Florida, whether it's California last month, Yellowstone, about 25 to 30% of all floods hit X zones, right? So they're low risk, but they get hit anyway. So peace of mind is just purely that. For low cost, it's added on to the homeowners, separate policy, but it's a peace of mind that if something happens, they're covered for, basic coverage. The third one, and this is why it's in red, is really, really critical. So what's happening now is about 1 in every 5 quotes, right? About 20% of all quotes right now are reading as flood zone is X, which is historically low risk, but they're reading that either the government sees risk in the property and is pricing it as such, or the private side is. One side is seeing it with risk, the other one's seeing no risk. Now, why we say is do a double take is that's worth further investigation. If there's a discrepancy, like in this quote, almost $1,000 from the private side to the public side, it's worth doing further investigation. Now, someone's seeing risk, someone's not. The nice thing is you can get a pretty good price here, right? $504 for basic coverage, and make sure you have peace of mind to make sure that that risk is accounted for. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move and do a demo for you. Before I do that, though, I want to show you the 2 places that, and let me just do this one more time. I kind of got off of slideshow too quickly. There are 2 access points to get quotes within the MLS system. The first is when you log in on your home page, there is a tile here that says CartoFront, which I will show you in a moment. The other is within every listing on Flex MLS. There's a little raindrop underneath the More button on the details page of every listing. So I'm now going to show you how those 2 work really quickly. And if you have questions so far, just feel free to put them into the chat function. Okay. Let me go to this. Okay, so this is a basic listing within the MLS, as I just showed. And right here, let me just show you, here's the property. Right here under More, can everybody see this? Is the CartoFront raindrop. It's as simple as just clicking that raindrop. Okay, we are now taking that information, putting it through our system, okay, and starting to present the quotes to you. Now, a couple of notes here about our system. The first is we're bilingual. So when you click from English to Spanish, you can see the information in Spanish. We also have what's called an ebook that Franz put together, and there's a link right here to that. So I'm going to show you that real quickly. The ebook is a consolidated version of what we're going through today with you. And it's really a handy resource, and you can just click the URL and send it to a client. But in just a few pages, you can get all the terms and all the information and helpful links for you. Okay. If you need support, you just click on that button and an email comes to us. So right off the bat, what you see here is information about our quotes. But to fully realize what's going on, we ask for you to put some information in about your clients or yourself if you just want to take the information for yourself. You can either do it by putting your name in this way or doing it with Google, okay? Signing in with Google, I'll do it that way. We do this to service you and your client in an easy way. We also ask when the policy should start. I'll just say just browsing. And when that becomes available, and you provide that to us, then we show you the quotes on the back end. Another important feature really quickly is that because we're an insurance technology company, we want to make sure that you understand what our role is as CartoFront. We understand that you're dealing with your client's information, sensitive information. There's a lot of privacy questions out there, as well as there's a lot of insurance regulation overall. And so this information talks a lot about what we do with the data, how that you need to talk with a licensed insurance agent to take these directional quotes and turn them into policies, our terms of service, our privacy policy, all of that's right there. And once you've read that, if you're tired of seeing this little bug in front of you, you can just hit understood and it goes away. Just a quick note here too. If you want to get other quotes, you can click on this button. There's also a form down here to share this information with your client directly through our system. So that's one access point. The other access point is when you come into the homepage. And in this regard, what you do is you click on this tile. And what's different about this is, and this is really handy for you as either property owners or about to take a listing, you can just put an address in, and I'll take that address I just had there. Hold on one second, let me just go back here. Address of this property was, I think it was 128 Denny, was that the address? Let me put that in and see if that works. 128 Denny. Here we go, Denison Street here. Let's just choose this one. You can put any address in here and auto populates and then ask for a quote. And our system will run that same way. This one didn't come up. I'm not sure why that is. We insure, just so you see this, we insure is the local agency that can help you on any questions. Let me try that again. Another quote. Let's try this one here, Gloucester. See if that works. Because I've already signed into the system for the first time, it knows who I am on the back end, so you can get as many quotes as you want without filling out all that information again. So in this regard here, FEMA's coverage is $43 a month. The private's $25 a month. And so this is reading as an X zone. Okay. Let's get into the content regarding the insurance stuff now. So, okay. And again, feel free to put questions in as we go along here. So let's get into some flood terminology here. So insurance is highly regulated, and to make this work, they've defined what a flood is. So I'll read this to you. A flood is defined as an excess of water on land that is normally dry. And this is the important thing, affecting 2 or more acres of land or 2 or more properties, right? So if you leave your sprinkler on in the backyard and you flood your backyard, that's not a flood. So it's got to affect you and your neighbors. Here's the other important thing is floods can be caused by storms, hurricanes, snow, which we've seen a lot of in the last several years. Especially, we saw a big snowstorm in Texas a couple of years ago, ice and snow, and it completely damaged most of the Houston area. And then also inadequate drainage systems and dams and levees. So there's been, we've built, all over in a consolidated way, and that's our systems can't handle the water runoff. So the last important note is flood and the flood policies are its own policy. It's separate than homeowners. So if a flood happens because of an internal water break, that's a homeowner's issue, not a flood insurance issue. Okay. Flood insurance obviously protects your property in the event of a flood or flood-related disaster. And again, this is another important note. Most people think that flood is somehow covered within a homeowner's policy. It is not. It's its own separate insurance policy. Critical that you take that away as part of this training. So as we just saw, there's really two types of insurance. Most people know the federal program, National Flood Insurance Program. On our platform, we have private flood insurance from National General Insurance. It's owned by Allstate, and it's rated A- by AM Best, which is a rating agency. There are many other different types of private flood insurance programs out there. We just happen to be working with Beyond Floods for this program for your MLS. So when you ask for a quote, what types of insurance will be quoted? Single-family homes for both National Flood Insurance and Beyond Floods, townhomes and condos, and mobile homes. When it comes to land, build-to-suits, or commercial, we are unable to do an automated quote that way. We can certainly help you that way, but you'd have to go through Erica to ask for her at We Insurance. So let's talk a little bit about the differences in the programs. And again, NFIP has modernized their program over the last couple of years. And so they're pretty much on par these days, but let me just kind of go through some of the nuances. When you take insurance from NFIP, you're actually taking insurance directly from the government. It's the largest flood insurer in the world. When you go through the private market, you know, whether it's Beyond Floods, whether it's Aon, whether it's Neptune, you're going directly through them, and they have their own reinsurance, and they have their own markets that they access to be able to provide the insurance to you. The pricing system has some nuances you've just seen. Risk rating 2.0 is now, you know, taking more of the data points that are necessary to price each and every parcel. There are still some gaps in the program. I'll just be honest with you. While they still look at a wide swath of the flood maps, and they're doing it, you know, in a more consolidated effort, there are some gaps like what we just saw between pricing on their model. The private insurance, you know, basically prices the property by you know, about 200 different data sets. And so in doing so, they are very calculating on how they price it. Now, the private market, you know, they might price something aggressively if they choose to, or they back off it if they have plenty of, you know, policies in that market. It's all based on their own calculations. And so it's important to understand that their pricing in different models no different than when you go to buy a car. Beyond Floods, if it were a car company, would be like Toyota. It's not going to be the lowest price, but you're going to get great value, and it's long-standing. And again, Allstate's behind it. That's one of the biggest names in insurance. Okay, this is probably the most critical regarding the coverages. So for National Flood Insurance, it's always the same coast to coast. The top limit's $250,000 for the building and $100,000 for the personal property. For Beyond Floods, because it's a private insurer, they can go all the way up to 1.5 million in coverage for the property. And then the way they calculate it is if you want to do personal property, they can do it up to half of the amount of the building coverage that they take. So given your market and given some of the properties that you're in, you know, Beyond Floods can go way beyond the baseline comparison for NFIP. The deductibles, again, the government is kind of like one size fits all. The total deductible is $2,500. They do it by policy. Personal is different than building. Beyond Floods has a great variation on deductibles, right? So they can run it at 1,000, they can run it up to 10,000. It's all combined, but they have a lot more latitude as far as buying down your insurance premium month over month. What's also important is flood insurance options. NFIP, again, is very kind of black and white on what they do. It's the same approach across the country, very limited. Beyond Floods, you have a lot of different options as far as if there's other buildings on the property, loss of use coverage. So if you have to vacate for like a month because the property's been severely damaged by a flood and you got to take a hotel room, they have options like that. You pay for them, but at least they have the options. The government really does not offer that. Last but not least, regarding timing, the government has a 30-day waiting period. On the private market, it ranges. Beyond Floods is about 5 days. That's kind of standard. You can probably see it somewhere in the 5 to 10-day waiting period. The reason why they do this, if a storm's brewing off the coast, right, you can't just get insurance bound, like a day or two before a storm. You've got to be within a waiting period, and they do that to protect everybody involved. Last but not least, we really think it's important to take our free quotes at all times. Yet, the National Flood Insurance Program is probably going to be best and most affordable for the highest risk properties. And then the private side is going to, mostly be in these low to medium risk properties, right? When it gets to be the highest of highest risk, the government still has a fiduciary responsibility to help underwrite that. And so ultimately they're subsidizing it a bit. They're not subsidizing it like they used to, right? Which was, why they've gone to this new market rate. Yet they're subsidizing it to some level, and it's most affordable that way. Okay, just really quickly, what is flood insurance coverage? So the building coverage is really the physical structure, right? So it's all the things that go into the actual physical piece of it, the electrical and plumbing, air, and all things like that. If you don't pay for detached additional buildings in your coverage on your property, it's not going to be covered. So detached garages or buildings need to have a rider to get that covered. And again, this is in the important thing. If you're going to contract with a client, make sure you're finding out exactly if you need the insurance and what's covered. And then also important is when you do get building coverage, it does handle debris removal. So if there's a really bad storm and trees are knocked down or property strewn across, you can have the debris removal as part of the building coverage if you have flood insurance. Contents is anything on the inside, and it's got a very wide variation on this. Personal belongings, things like curtains, portable air conditioners, washers and dryers, even food that might be in your freezer. Valuable items such as artwork and other things can be included. Again, those will need riders, especially if you're doing the private insurance. What's not covered? If there's pre-existing due to moisture or mildew or mold or something that's not determined by a flood, if you have personal artifacts or currency or things like that, things of belongings outside of insured building, like patios, deck furniture, fences, seawalls, those things are not covered unless, again, if you get a rider on some of these things. And financial losses due to business interruptions. So again, if you're working at home or your client's working at home and they have damage, unless they have loss of use coverage, it's not going to be covered. And then again, landscape and exterior features, generally not covered by the rank and file flood insurance. A couple of important terms just to talk about. If you do have to go to a claim, there's two different ways that they look at it, right? One is replacement cash value, right? That's the cost to repair or replace an insured property, right? And that's mostly if the property is your primary residence, both the building and the contents will be covered under replacement cost cash value. If it's actual cash value, it's the replacement cost minus depreciation for wear and tear. And again, this is mostly for rental properties or second homes where it's not your primary residence and the contents will only be covered by that actual cash value. So again, it's replacement cost minus depreciation. Let's talk a little bit about resources that are available to you, and then we'll go into Q&A. So we have a landing page available to you, and there's a link on the homepage to be able to get into that. The ebooks, as we showed you, are available to you. We'll bundle all this afterwards and send you these links so that you have it, as well as the video, so that you have all of that in one place. And these are both in English and Spanish, and that's a great resource to send on. And then some of these links also will be included, right? FEMA risk rating, your homepage that we just showed, and then access to We Insure Beyond Floods and My Flood Status. So just a really quick note about My Flood Status. Many of you probably know about this service. If you need to get a flood zone determination, My Flood Status for $30 will give you a very specific flood zone determination for any property. You pay for it, but it can be very, very helpful in helping bring that forward for your insurance. If you have any questions and want to get to us after today's program, info@cartofront.com. And if you need any help with insurance, Erica Ostrander at weinsuregroup.com would be more than happy to help you. They are able to help not just in your area, but coast to coast. We have a QR code. So, most of what you do is on the desktop, but if you need to and you want to be mobile and get a quote, we're happy to help you there. Use this and be able to pull that up on your browser, whether on desktop or mobile. And with that, we really are grateful that you're all here today. I'll stop the share. We'll turn it over to Q&A. Fran, if you can moderate this, it'll be great. And we'll go from there. We've got about 22 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Just to let you know, Jason, when you asked those questions at the start as to whether people had taken a quote yet, I think almost across the board, we have new users, lots of no's. So
Okay,
it's great to have this chance to share with you all. In terms of what was valuable to people in using CartoFront, we had what flood zone is the property in? Is it in a flood zone? If so, what designation? And I've got a note of several questions that came in during your demo and presentation. From Diane, we had the question, how reliable are those quotes? I've always thought it best to have the buyer and or seller talk with their insurance agent.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. They're very reliable. So for FEMA, we're actually pulling the quotes directly from FEMA. From the private insurance, we're pulling directly from the private insurance. Now that said, they're directional quotes, right? They're meant to be within ranges, and we've taken a very broad view of this and a very conservative view of this. So to actually go from directional quote to bindable quote, whether it's working through our insurance resource, Erica and her team, or your own people, it would be important to have the right information presented, and that will be, your buyer's, closing dates, actual value of the property on the contract. They're going to need, the insurance people are going to need probably a half a dozen pieces of information to put it in their system and go from those directional quotes to something that's bindable that can go back to your client.
Thank you, Jason.
If anything, just one last point on this. We've taken a conservative view, knowing that with those additional pieces of information, you can hone on more specific, coverages for that. But we've gone very conservative. We'd rather see your pricing go down on these quotes than go up. We don't want any sticker shock.
Thank you, Jason. Great question from Jack, which I sort of answered in the chat, but in case you'd like to add anything, can we request these online quotes outside of normal business hours?
Absolutely. We're 24/7. Although we had a little outage today for the first time in 2 years, which was ironic. And Marcia and I were going back and forth on that a little bit. I was a little nervous this morning. But yeah, you can absolutely get quotes at any time. So, and we're happy to help. And again, from a service point of view, Erica's team is on the Eastern Seaboard. I would say more like 8 to 6 if you need service on the insurance side, Monday through Friday reliably. But if you email her, and we'll get you her details, she's pretty much available, on the weekends and at nights too, if you need her.
Thank you, Jason. Doug asks, when sharing the info, that's the quote info, can you text to a phone number?
Can you text to a phone number? Right now it's all through email. I will make a note to talk with my tech people and ask them if we can bring that online.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. It's always
Great
good to know
idea.
anything
Yeah.
else that would be helpful to you. And Joyce asks, how long are the quotes good for?
It's a great question. Typically, these quotes are good for about 6 months. Not much is going to happen in that period of time, substantially. On the back end, both the government and the private insurers are always updating their data and their information, their risk profiles. But there is a time box of about 180 days on any quote in the flood insurance market.
Great. And I think the last question we have right now is from Linda, who asks, where are we located? Where are we out of?
Our headquarters are in Chicago, Illinois, but we have a kind of a decentralized team all across the country, and working in the different markets that we are currently supporting. So, we're thrilled. We're thrilled to be, part of what's going on in Cape Cod. Historically, too, just to let you know, we went through NAR's REACH program in 2020. So we're a graduate of their technology accelerator. We've been in the market for 2 years. We launched in Miami in 2021, and we're excited to be, supporting your market and your members going forward.
And that's all we've got for questions in the chat right now. But if anyone else has anything, you're welcome to either type in the chat box, or if you prefer to unmute yourself, you're welcome to ask in person.
Okay. Great. Well, we
And
hope
just
this
to
is,
say,
go ahead.
oh,
Go ahead, Fran.
excuse me, sorry, Jason.
No, of course.
Just to say, Marsha did a great job of answering this in the chat, but a few people asked about getting copies of slides of the recording. All of that will be shared with you
Right.
after we wrap up. We'll package that in an email for you all.
Yes. And we'll also post it on the webpage that you have access to each and every day. Really appreciate everybody taking their time today and doing a lunch and learn. Thank you so much. If you felt inclined, please let your colleagues know that we'll be back at it on Tuesday, February 28th. Same bat time, same bat station, for those of you who remember that from the day. So thank you very much. I see a smile from Susan there. We're probably the same generation. And have a great rest of the day, and enjoy the rest of the week. Bye-bye.